Good evening, everyone. Let us begin. Our subject tonight is jinx and the evil eye. What does Jewish tradition have to say about, can someone, chas v'shalom, put a hex on me? Do words have an impact? And what about the evil eye? Perhaps you've heard the phrase kenahora or onayin hora, which, bli ayin hora, the red bandana, or the ben porat Yosef ale ayin. Perhaps you've heard that one. Ben porat Yosef.
That's also
It's also neged ayin hara, yeah. Oh, the salt, the two. Yeah. So here's an interesting one for you. I don't know. Jinx. It's like a curse. Yeah.
What's Ben Torah is
I'll get into it in a moment. So perhaps you've heard of the curse, the Billy Goat curse on the Chicago Cubs. So here we have from fox8.com the legend that a Chicago tavern owner named Billy Cianis pronounced a curse on the Chicago Cubs that they would never win another pennant. They would never win another championship because they refused to admit his goat to the stadium. He thought his goat would be good luck for the Cubs. They said they wouldn't let the goat in because the goat stinks. And so Cianis cursed them. And then when the Cubs lost the series to the Tigers, Cianis said, well, now who stinks? And for how many years? From 1945 until 2016, the Cubs never won a championship. And they seem to have the worst luck in the world. So what's going on with the Billy Goat curse? Well, if you remind me at the end, I'll tell you what happened in 2016 when they finally won. Okay. So the evil eye. Is it real? And if so, what can we do to counter it? Now, first, I want to turn to the Torah. The Torah says the following phrase: you shall not curse a deaf person. You shall not curse a deaf person. You couldn't hear that? What's wrong with cursing a person? Why shouldn't you curse someone? You'll hurt their feelings. Well, what if they can't hear you? What's wrong with cursing them? So, okay. So now we can so first of all, we have to understand the meaning of the text is do not curse even a deaf person, right? Because obviously, if the Torah is saying don't curse a deaf person, it doesn't mean, but you can curse somebody who hears you. You know, there are some people who feel that they have a license to be rude or harsh because they tell it like it is to your face. Okay, good. So, but that's obviously the Torah. When the Torah says don't curse a deaf person, it means don't curse even a deaf person. But again, let's go back to what is wrong with cursing a deaf person. If they can't hear the curse and it wouldn't hurt their feelings, what's the problem? And so to this we turn to the Sefer HaChinuch, which is a work that goes into the principal concepts and the meaning behind all of the 613 mitzvahs following the weekly Torah portion. We don't know the name of the author. but we do know that it was composed in 13th century Spain. So,
Very interesting study. They, with this, with curse words and beautiful language. There was a study done on ice water that all words spoken to water, and then it was put into the freezer to freeze. Then there were beautiful words, that were so beautiful, and then it came up with snowflakes and how happy I am. And those are the words that they put on the other box of water, and they put that in the freezer.
yeah,
And then lo and behold, when they took out each one, the box that had the nasty language were just plain milkshakes, abstract. But the ice cubes that came out with a beautiful language, were gorgeous snowflakes with a beautiful diagram.
yeah, I heard of this. I've heard of this. The words spoken over the water. There's a similar study about words spoken over the plants. Yeah, but it's interesting, and I would say that scientific methodology aside, let's turn to I want to note specifically the language of the Sefer HaChinuch as to how he addresses this, just because I read kind of back and forth on those studies. But I think Sefer HaChinuch handles this back and forth very interestingly. He says, even though we can't know the mechanism through which a curse affects the subject and how words have this power, but we know that all people, Jews and non-Jews, take curses seriously and believe that even the curse of an ordinary person has an effect on the subject, bringing misfortune and distress. Knowing that this is the case, we can suggest that this is the reason for the transgression. God is forbidding us from causing damage to others with our lips, just as he forbids us from damaging them with our actions. So, Sefer HaChinuch doesn't say that this is proof from the Torah that this is the case. He says it's common belief that this is the case, and therefore, apparently he takes it for granted that that is the case, that words have an impact in ways that we can't possibly see. And so he says, and therefore the Sefer HaChinuch's conclusion is that even a person who can't hear the curse would be affected by it in ways that we can't understand, and it shouldn't, and therefore you shouldn't do that. Rambam, as we know, Rambam is the rationalist. He tries to explain the Torah in the most empirical way possible, whenever possible. And as we know from last week, where Rambam didn't want to accept the ideas of astrology, he takes a similar approach here. And he says that clearly, if you see text 4, page 85, clearly the reason that we're forbidden from cursing somebody is because it'll hurt their feelings. And therefore, when somebody can't hear the curse, they wouldn't be distressed by it. And you would think, therefore, that there should be nothing wrong with cursing someone who can't hear. However, Rambam says, the reason why you shouldn't curse somebody who can't hear you is because not of what it does to them, but because of what it does to you. Cursing somebody is a dark place to go to. And the Torah cares not only about the victim, but also about the aggressor. That is, even if, one way of thinking about it is, when a person tries to do something wrong to someone, if they succeed, it's in God's hands. If they succeed in their bad plans. Because, a person can aim a gun, chas v'shalom, God forbid, and the wind can come and blow the bullet, or something can come in between and block the bullet. So on the earthly court, that person couldn't be held liable. But God, who sees the hearts of people, would hold that person accountable for having gone to that dark and ungodly place. And so to read the last line of the quote here from Rambam, we are cautioned not to incite ourselves to revenge or accustom ourselves to expressing anger. So we have two takes, one saying that cursing someone has an effect in ways that we can't possibly measure, and others that say that while it may not have an effect on the person if they can't hear it, you shouldn't do it because you'll be going to a dark place. You're going to an ungodly place. So that's the curse, right? Some say curses have an effect, and others say curses even if they don't have an effect on the person to whom the curse is directed, they have an effect on the person who makes the curse. Now we have the evil eye. What is the evil eye? Text 5, Rabbi Yehoshua said, an evil eye, the evil inclination, and the hatred of one's fellows drive a person from the world. So let's take the easy ones. The evil inclination, right? So the Mishnah is talking about, when we talk about driving a person from the world, the world means society. And so driving a person from the world means that it causes them to become disconnected from society, causes them to become isolated and separated. Or to put it in positive terms, avoiding these three negative patterns or behaviors are what allow us to have healthy relationships and to be well cooperating in society. So the evil inclination, we have to think about, in order for us to be able to play nicely with others, we have to be able to withhold gratification. We have to be able to control ourselves. And so the Yetzer Ra, the evil inclination, is the self-serving instinct, the self-serving impulse. And we have to control the self-serving impulses with our principles, with our values, with our Yetzer Tov, with our inclination to do good, with our higher self. Hatred of one's fellows, similarly, in order to be able to survive in society, we can't be carrying around hatred in our heart. What is the ayin hara? What is the evil eye? So we turn to the commentaries on this text. The Magen Avos says, he quotes Maimonides as saying, the evil eye means greediness. Greediness. Ayin Tov means generosity. Ayin Hara means greediness. Greediness drives a person from the world because obsessively pursuing wealth can lead a person to dangerous places. The Magen Avos, however, says, that's Maimonides, however, I disagree. And I believe that, or he says the Talmudic definition of the evil eye is looking at another person with jealousy or hatred, which causes damage to the other person and their property. So again, we have this, we see the similar thread of these two views in Jewish thought. One saying that The evil eye does harm to the person to whom it's directed. And the other saying that the evil eye or the curse does harm to the person who holds it. So, and remember that Rambam had the same issue with the Talmud in with regards to astrology, where Rambam said, I know that there are Talmudic sources that say that astrology is real and that the forces in the heavenly bodies have an impact. However, I don't take that for granted. I don't see that as real. He said, we have to understand the context in which those teachings were said, and understand they may be the opinion of an individual, but not necessarily accepted Jewish teaching. And finally, often deep teachings are concealed in other matters. But again, that's Rambam's view on that. And we have this other well-founded view in Torah that our attitudes, our words affect not only ourselves, but others as well. And in fact, if you look in your book, if you look in the book, page 88 and 89, etc., we have a number of examples from Torah where we see people taking steps to avoid evil eye. Now, again, it's possible to see these stories as either people seeking the evil eye so as to avoid harm coming onto them when people would give them the evil eye. It's also possible that they were seeking to avoid arousing jealousy in the other person. An example of this is that Rashi teaches that when the 10 brothers, Joseph's brothers, went to Egypt, remember that? There was a famine in the land, and Joseph's 10 brothers went down to Egypt to get food because there was food stored in Egypt. And the Rashi shares this tradition that the 10 brothers all went in through 10 different gates. They all went through 10 different ports of entry. And the reason they did this, says Rashi, was to avoid attracting attention to themselves and having an evil eye on them. Later on, Yosef, posing as the Egyptian viceroy, uses this to accuse them of being spies. Oh, look at you. You all went through different ports of entry. You're trying to see the vulnerability of the land. You're trying to find what weaknesses we have. You're checking which port of entry is the easiest to slip into and out of, etc. A very common one that we even find more explicitly in the Torah, at least to some degree, is the prohibition against counting Jews by head, and instead to count them using a token, the half shekel. And even at one point in history, David HaMelech, King David, counted. King David HaMelech ordered a count by head of the Jewish people, and there was a plague that occurred as a result. I'm sorry, the David HaMelech later acknowledged that he had done the wrong thing. Yeah.
Is it also the custom? I've seen religious Jews not telling people how many kids they have.
Yes.
Or how many grandkids they have.
Yes, that is.
But they don't tell you.
Yes, that is true. That people avoid saying the number of children or grandchildren they have so as not to bring an ayin hara.
Count every day, don't you have to count?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can't count anyway, so
Yeah,
that's why people say. So what do people do? They'll say not 1, not 2, not 3. That's one of the ways. Or they'll count using a pasuk. They'll say Hoshia et Amecha or Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lecha Min Haaretz. 10 words. So, but the classic one is Hoshia et Amecha Uvarech et Nachlatecha, which is actually a good way. It's an appropriate pasuk. It has 10 words, but the words say save your people and bless your heritage. So Ureim v'naseim ad ha'olam, send blessings to them for eternity. So kind of even as we count, we try to counteract the count with a blessing.
It's from Tanakh or?
It's from Tehillim.
It's from Tehillim, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a significant difference between curse and ayin hara?
Is there a significant difference between a curse and an ayin hara? A curse would be, at least for our purposes today, a curse is something which is said in words, and an ayin hara is something which comes from the eye. The way someone looks. Yeah.
I think the thought also, right, Rabbi? Ayin hara.
So it's interesting that and I'm avoiding saying the thought, and the reason is because both the curse and the ayin hara have a thought behind them. So I'm avoiding distinguishing by the thought, and instead I'm distinguishing by the tool. You could, however, say that in the case, and this is just what occurs to me, is that a curse, in the case of a curse, the thought comes first and the word comes second, whereas in the evil eye, the eye comes first and the thought comes second. So maybe that's another way to differentiate them.
So then, Asians, when they say karma, that's something like the karma.
So actually, karma is karma. I don't want to get too much into Buddhism now, but karma, as it's spoken of in the West, is not accurate to how Buddhism actually means karma. Yeah. Karma really means the things you do in the world. That's really what it means. That's all it means. The things you do in the world, the ways in which you have it, the ways in which you act upon the world. Yeah. But it's become a thing. Woo, karma. But karma got him, But the idea is that when you act upon the world, you create a chain reaction, right? It's kind of associated, but it's taken way out of the bounds of what Buddhism really means. Yeah. God forgive me for speaking about Buddhism in a shul. Okay. Whatever. So can we learn good things from the Goyim? So I will say this: whatever is good is already in the. Let's put it this way. The Rebbe put it this way once: all world philosophies are a mixture of good and not good, truth and falsehood. The Torah is all truth, and because when something is devised by people, it will reflect the people who devise it, and people are complicated, and people have a mixture of positive and negative, truth and falsehood. So what emerges from them will reflect that. But Torah emerges from the universal truth of God, and therefore whatever truth is there is already in Torah. But at the same time, when we talk about scientific analysis, not beliefs, but scientific analysis, so that's what we mean when we say chokhmah b'goyim ta'amin, right? That we should certainly accept that the nations of the world have wisdom in this. When we talk about, to the extent that they've performed experiments and come up with empirical study, or they share their experiences, learn from their mistakes, of course.
I'm sensitive to certain people. Next to them, I don't feel comfortable. They're bad vibes.
Yeah.
And I feel the good vibes too.
Yeah.
And I can feel it. So, how does that person doesn't know that what I'm feeling.
Right.
But they can say that how much they like me, and I
Right.
know exactly
what are.
Right. So you're saying that you feel spiritual vibes, positive or negative, from people being in their presence. There's an electric, a sense of something, some energy that comes from them that you can sense. And if it's negative, it's unsettling.
So,
And if it's positive, it's good. So what to say about that? I'll just talk about it from a psychological point of view for a moment. People who are, what's the word? People who are disturbed create disruption around them. But chaos is not more powerful than order. And so what helps me in this regard is to remember that a disorder, that's what it is. Disorderly people create disorder, right? But what helps me to realize is that the same way that I feel their energy, or that I may be sensitive to it, they may not be sensitive to the energy in the way that I am, but it has an impact, right? So I try to hold on to recognize it, to hold on to my inner peace, to hold on to my inner order, and to remember that the one who is intentional is the one who will ultimately be more effective. So by intentionally holding on to that calm and peace, and knowing that that also has an energy that I'll be able to lishader, how do you say that, to radiate that energy around me, and not to be intimidated by it, or to be thrown off by it too much. So talking about it spiritually, today we're talking really about there may be an evil eye component there, and we'll talk about that. We'll hopefully talk about that. Yeah.
Are you saying that the person who's casting the evil eye is the only one guilty, but not the person upon whom the evil eye is cast?
Very good. Very good question. Very good question. Who's at fault? Whose fault is it? So I want to hold that, because that's coming. We're coming to that. Yeah.
This is a more lively discussion around like this, the first two classes. I remember I told you when I signed up that this is gonna be, this class number 3 is gonna be for the crown.
Yeah.
Crown of
Yes, Bracha.
My father used to say, if you believe in evil eye, it will get. If you don't believe in it, nothing will happen. I have to believe in it.
Okay.
That's one. And you're talking about the first, is what first? First the Yemenite. It's true.
Ezra cursed the Yemenites for not coming to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that. I want to do some research on that. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. The Chida, a great Jewish teacher who wrote prolifically on Jewish topics, says the following teaching: when you talk about someone's wealth or family, and you talk positively about their life, you have to bless them to avoid the evil eye, to not be affected by the evil eye, which is why we hear this term, as we said, Kainahora ben Porat Yosef. You see somebody who's so beautiful, ben Porat Yosef Ale'ayin, means like the beauty of Yosef Ale'ayin, which in this case is kind of being used to say beyond the eye, untouchable by the eye. Or Kanai Kanahara, they have 15 children on Ein Hara, because you want to say, this is a way of saying, I said something positive, but I recognize that in saying that positive thing and highlighting that strength, that I may have created some evil eye. And again, I would say that to talk about this from both the perspective, the two tracks that we discussed, one track is to say, by saying something positive, I may be arousing jealousy, I may be drawing attention to them in a way that might bring someone an evil eye, and therefore I have to bless them to counteract that, because some harm may come to them. Another way of looking at it, maybe in the Rambam's view, is to say, to make sure that I don't become jealous as I focus on the wealth or blessings in someone else's life, that I would also send some blessing along with that to make sure that I'm not in any way jealous of them. Okay. So, and that's also the spitting is like a way of like playing it down, denigrating. It's nothing. In Yiddish, I don't know if you have this, but people would say, instead of referring to somebody as beautiful, they would say they're mies. Mies means ugly, disgusting. Yeah, mieskeit, right? Mieskeit. It means ugliness. Yeah. The Chinese are especially good at this. There, it's a little bit different. They abuse their children. The Chinese abuse their children verbally.
Yeah.
The theater people break a leg.
What's that?
The theater people break a leg.
Yes, break a leg. Yeah. You know why you say break a leg, right? So that you get in a cast. Okay. So that you get casted. Yeah. Okay. So the Or HaChaim, who is a commentary on the Chumash, he incorporates the philosophical and the mystical into his commentary on the Chumash, on the Torah, explains philosophically how we could understand how an evil eye or a curse might work. And there's a question that we have to address. If a person, and to your point, Bracha, if a person has no sins, how would they, or let's start it the other way. If a person has some vulnerability, if they're owed divine punishment, then it's coming to them anyways. And if they're not owed divine punishment, why would divine punishment come to them? Because of the words of a person, right? So this is the philosophical question. So he says, the Or HaChaim explains it as follows. He says, there are two ways of working in the world, two ways in which God interacts with the world. One is with grace and loving kindness, and the other is with strict judgment. Strict judgment doesn't mean that the wicked are not punished. Strict judgment means that everyone is treated exactly according to their actions, right? So, Shurat Hadin, Midat Hadin, right? So he says, God has patience for all transgressors. So people, all kinds of people who've done all kinds of things, walk in the earth all the time, and they have good lives. We don't understand how this happens. God is patient and gracious, I should say. But then sometimes when attention is drawn, when attention is drawn to a person, they become scrutinized to see whether or not they are deserving of all of this grace. And then the attribute of judgment comes on them, and they are and they would be punished. I had this with my kids. We had a Friday nights. Obviously it's a little later. They would stay up past their bedtime. We have Shabbos dinner together. But I began to notice that after 9 o'clock, they would start to get a little crazy. So I would tell them, now where we were sitting in the dining room, the clock is behind my head. So as long as they behaved, I never knew what time it was. But as soon as they started to misbehave, or he's fighting with me, she's bothering me, I would say, wait a second, what time is it? Oh, it's after 9 o'clock. It's time to go to bed, right? So you might say that that's a way of understanding that there is a period of grace. But sometimes when something negative, attention is drawn, so then we turn to, wait, what were the rules? Okay, we're going back to the rules. So that's maybe a way. Again, we're talking about Hashem. We don't understand how Hashem works, but This is what the Orach Chaim teaches, and therefore, talking about the curse is not, again, the curse isn't causing any harm to the person. It's only attracting scrutiny to that person, divine scrutiny, universal scrutiny, and asking, does that person deserve the leeway and the grace that they've been getting? Rav Eliyahu Dessler says another interesting take on this, and that is that talking about the evil eye, right? It was implicit. I didn't say it outright. An evil eye is when someone looks with jealousy or with a negative eye at something that is particularly praiseworthy, some great gift, blessing, or achievement. And Rav Eliyahu Dessler says that the reason why a person might be punished or harm might befall a person when someone else has an evil eye on them is that they have caused the other person to become jealous of them. And we have to be mindful of that. Am I inducing someone else to negative character, to negative behavior? Now, is that my fault? It's not my fault, but at the same time, it's something that I should be mindful of. Right? We cannot take responsibility for other people's reactions, but we do need to behave in a reasonable way.
Must.
Right. So in this case, we're talking about modesty. Yes. Right. Again, this is an important nuance to point out. You know, if I insult someone, they have the choice to respond responsibly, to respond maturely, or to react. That's on them. At the same time, I can't ignore the part that I played in this whole thing. So I have to behave reasonably, even as the other person is responsible for their choices. Okay, so one way. But the upshot here from the Orach Chaim is that there is a direct impact from someone else's negative view, from someone else's critical view, in that it invites divine scrutiny and makes me subject to judgment that otherwise I would not have endured, and exposes any vulnerabilities that I have that for which I may need a bit of a love tap from God. So that's the direct impact approach. The Zohar in the Kabbalistic teaching brings another element in here. And that is that there are two systems, let's say. There are fundamentally two components to the world. There is the systems by which the world operates, the rules and regulations of the universe. And then there is the eternal source of the universe. So the eternal source is not controlled by the rules. The rules emerged from him. When we look at the universe, we are only able to see the rules and regulations. When we talk about, we are able to understand nature. What is nature? It's the rules and regulations by which the world operates, the systems, the predictable systems of the universe. That's the revealed aspect of the universe. What is hidden behind those systems is the infinite and eternal source of the universe, God. Of course, God is also in the rules of nature, but Zohar talks about it that God exists in two ways, in the revealed way and in the hidden way. Now, the source of blessing, let's say the rules and regulations, there's no room for blessing there. Everything is action and reaction, cause and effect. That's how nature operates. But for there to be blessing, for there to be something unexpected positive that overcomes the rules, that comes from the eternal and infinite source of the universe, from the master behind the system. And therefore, Zohar says, let's see it inside. God operates on two levels, concealed and revealed. This is text 9. The revealed level is that of worldly justice, while the concealed level is the source from which all blessings emerge. As a result, all of a person's conduct that is concealed is saturated with blessing, and all of a person's conduct that is in the open is subject to strict justice. On this level, on the revealed level, everything is subject to the evil eye. That is, when we are living in the revealed, when we put things out into the revealed world and expose them to the causes and effects, the systems and structures of the revealed universe, they will have to confront the unbending reality of those systems. But when something is hidden, when it's private, concealed, modest, then it's open to the secret blessings of the world. It means live modestly, yeah. And I will say this, there are people who have, so I don't want to speak negatively, I want to give brachas. Giving tzedakah without the person knowing. The side point is with giving tzedakah is that sometimes a person should give tzedakah publicly, even at risk of the evil eye, for the sake of heaven. The reason is because when it's known that big tzedakah is being given, it encourages others to give tzedakah as well. So there are some people that are unnecessarily concerned, or not in a positive way, concerned with the evil eye. They should take that risk and do the mitzvah, and trust that Hashem will protect them. And we'll get to that at the end, hopefully. But it means not buying the car that you can afford. A person can afford to buy a Maserati. I don't need to conspicuously consume my wealth. Right? I don't need to wear however many carats I can afford, you know. These kinds of things, you know. We don't show off what we have. It means I'm considerate and thoughtful about what I post on social media. People, and by the way, when it comes to social media, is a whole other thing. And here we go both to the spiritual evil eye has an impact, and also to the rational Rambam approach and Rav Dessler's approach, which is that when people post on Instagram, on Facebook, TikTok, their curated life, the best parts of their life, or even worse, you have people who will rent fancy cars and then take Instagram photos in front of them, right? This is a thing. Like, it's not your car, or they're walking down the street and they see the thing and they pose on the Rolls Royce like it's theirs, right? This is a thing, right? This is a thing. It's real, no? Yeah. This is great intelligence. No, it's that, right? The Instagram influencers, right? So this, or the people who Photoshop their images. This is another big problem, right? So it creates two things. Of course, it attracts unnecessary attention to oneself in a way that makes one vulnerable to ayin hara. What happens? What happens on Instagram? You put a picture on Instagram and you're inviting comments, right? So that right there, that's kind of a very practical example of how behavior can attract negativity. And then there is the problem, like Rav Dessler said, of inducing jealousy in someone else. What happens to the people who see those pictures? And all day long, they're scrolling Nebuch. All day long, they're scrolling and seeing the curated life of others compared to the rough and tumble life of their own. And, and what happens to that is it has a negative effect, especially on young women, their body image, eating disorders, depression, anxiety. All of this is terrible through the roof. There was this recently, Facebook had to go and testify in Congress about this. They knew it. They knew that this was happening. And Facebook was terrible, Instagram. And they had data. They had data showing the behavior of young teen girls and how it was negatively affecting them, and they didn't do anything about it. It was terrible. Now they instituted all kind of fake things, but the problem for sure is not stopped. Right? So this is the Rav Dessler approach, is that, but we have to be mindful that by posting our curated life, we can be inducing stress, negative emotion in others. Remember, we're not responsible for other people's feelings. At the same time, we do have to respond. We do have to behave reasonably and with good intention. And so the question is, am I saying shut down your Facebook? I'm not saying shut down your Facebook, even though it's probably a good idea. But and it's a real question. It's hard. There's no science to this. There's no rule that you can say this is okay to post, that's not okay to post. But the point is, what is my intention? Am I living an ayin hara life? Am I living a life where I'm trying to attract attention to myself and draw attention to my successes? Or am I trying to inspire? Or am I trying to connect with friends? There's a very big difference between connecting with friends and displaying my life.
But I don't think that you can necessarily you can hold a platform responsible for people's ill behavior.
That's true. That's true. And the Facebook story, the Facebook issue is nuanced in that it also involves the behavior of algorithms and the ways in which the types of content that it pushes to the users. So it's not, you don't only see on these, in the early social media platforms, you only saw the content produced by your friends. But once they opened it up, you became, based on your interests and the kinds of friends you had and the kinds of things your friends were posting, they would show you other content. So this was, for example, not to get too far into this, but for example, girls who were searching about dieting would be shown stuff by anorexics, kind of and this and so it leading to this kind of and of course teenagers are very susceptible, and social contagion is also a function here. So it was a big problem, and it still is a big problem. Yeah.
I want to say that when television first came out in the 1940s, I think it was, they thought it would be a bad influence, and not because of the content of the shows. And in the 1500s, when Cervantes wrote Don Quixote, the whole story Don Quixote is about a man who goes crazy because he reads books. He's reading books,
Right.
of knights of the chivalrous knights.
Yeah.
So this argument has been going on for centuries.
That's true. That's true. And there is truth, even though it's old, it's still true. All right. So what do we do to prevent the ayin hara? So we talked about privacy, modesty. The Talmud also says that ein habracha sharui elo al hadavar hasamoy min ha'ayin. The blessing rests on that which is concealed from the eyes. If you turn to page 99 and 100, when Bilam wants to curse the Jewish people, one of the blessings he gave instead was Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob. What was he seeing in the Jewish tents? Midrash says, brought here in text 12, he said he saw that the doors of the tents were not open facing each other. They were open in such a way that each person couldn't see into the other's tent. That is, everyone was mindful of the privacy of the other. People were protective of their own privacy. And therefore, Bilam said, I cannot curse them with an evil eye because they're so private. And here on text 13 from the Talmud, Ein habracha mitzuya ela b'davar hasamim min ha'ayin. Blessing is found only in a matter concealed from the eye. This, by the way, is a big difference in the Jewish view. This is, for example, the Torah is always behind two coverings. If something is special, if something is precious, it is kept private. And this this is also a matter of dress. We talk about modesty for women perhaps too much. Modesty applies to men as well. As we don't dress we shouldn't dress in a way that attracts too much attention to ourselves, to our body or to our status. It's an ayin hara. Should be mindful of that. Just because you have assets doesn't mean you should flaunt them. That's the Jewish view.
If I do be in a room with all our furniture, with all our walls, with all our money, that let nobody can come in. Maybe they will give us evil eye. That's not the purpose.
So again, let's okay. I don't know about the German Jews in the Second World War, but I do know that German Jews in America, German Jews in America, at least the ones that I know, were always very modest. I know many German Jews who were extremely wealthy, but who lived very simply. So I don't know what was in Germany. But I'll say this, to your point. When the Talmud says a bracha only rests on that which is concealed from the eye, I think that there's a number of ways to look at this. One is to say, avoid the evil eye, and that's why we're bringing it today. Avoid the evil eye by maintaining modesty. The other point is that the Talmud is also saying, blessing, if your person wants blessing, this is the blessing way to go in your life. Privacy and modesty. Now, hide your silver, live in anxiety. I'm not talking about hiding and living in anxiety, but there's also another side, right? Which in Western culture, we have this thing of conspicuous consumption. This is the whole, that I don't want to get on my entertainment industrial complex soapbox again, but the entertainment industrial complex is constantly pushing us is pushing this narrative of status through conspicuous consumption. You get honor by which kind of things you own and how you show them to others. It's throughout the culture, and it's not healthy. Now, the other point is, now somebody wrote a letter to the Rebbe concerned about their ayin hara. So I didn't talk about the chamsa, and I didn't talk about the red string, and I didn't talk about the amulets, but I want to talk about this letter of the Rebbe. One moment. I'll come to you one moment. The Rebbe says as follows. This is the best protection against the evil eye. You want to know protection against the evil eye? I'll read the second. Shall I read the second? No, I'll read the first paragraph first. This is the order of the Rebbe. If I was writing the letter, I would write it the other way, but okay, because the Rebbe wasn't teaching a course, the Rebbe was giving advice to a person. I'm going to read the second paragraph second. On the second paragraph first. Page 98, text 10. On the most basic level, firmly resolving to align your daily conduct with the guidance of our living Torah and to observe the mitzvot, and about which we are told you shall live with them, is God's command. In addition, This is the path to receiving God's blessings in everything you need. Right? So if we're talking about God's blessings come through Torah and mitzvos. Live according to the Torah, and you're surrounded by the divine presence. And then you're untouchable. And now again, going back to the first paragraph, if your mezuzot are kosher, and most importantly, your daily conduct is in accordance with Torah law, it's absolutely impossible for the evil eye to have any effect on you. So we want to surround. Remember, going back to what we talked about last week with the astrology, God is stronger than everything. That's the best amulet of all. Better than chamsa, better than red string, better than tfu tfu tfu, is better than sprinkling salt, which is not a Jewish custom. It's a Eastern European thing, but God power, man, God power. Yes, Esther, go ahead. Esther.
The eye has a second meaning, at least for people in not only in Cuba, in South America, and many European countries. We didn't call it the evil eye. We call it the eye of God, el ojito de Dios.
Right.
El ojito de Dios. To protect you from the evil eye.
Right. So there's the positive eye, right? And often you'll see the chamsas with the eye in them. Now I want to talk about the amulets. Okay. There is a value in having the ojito de Dios, the God's eye, or having a chamsa hanging on your wall. But it's not the best, but I'll tell you what the value of it might be. And that is, it reminds you, it's a reminder about what's important in life, right? Wearing, a $64,000 diamond and then putting next to it El Ojito de Dios, it doesn't work. But if you have the Ojito de Dios and it reminds you, God is watching me, people are watching me, I should be mindful and behave myself, right? So that's an important way that it reminds us. But again, that's the job of the mezuzah, right?
It's
That's
a reminder that Hashem is always with me.
That's right. So that's the reminder of the mezuzah, is that Hashem is with me, and that I should conduct myself according to him. If he's always with me, but I need to be with him. That's the point. I take God with me when I go into my house. I take God with me when I go out of my house. God is always with me, but I need to go in his way.
Years ago, people used to put mezuzahs on their dashboards of their cars and everything.
Yeah, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing to do. Why not? It reminds you to drive with God.
I heard that Houdini put a mezuzah on every hotel door that he
It was George. He's buried in Queens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not his real last name. I think it was Weiss or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could hear that. Houdini. Yeah, okay. All right. So let's see. Finally, talking about the negative energy and positive energy. We talked about the evil eye. I want to talk about the good eye. Okay. The good eye is page 102, text 14. Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Hanina, never consider the blessing of an ordinary person unimportant. We know of two people, leaders in their respective generations, who received blessings from ordinary people, and the blessings were fulfilled. And they are King David, and Daniel. David was blessed by Aravna, who was not Jewish. Daniel was blessed by Daryovesh, who was maybe also not Jewish. And both of them brought great blessings. In the case of David, he was engaging in a negotiation with Aravna, who owned the land, which he was a Jebusite, and he owned the land of the Temple Mount. He had a threshing floor up there. And David HaMelech purchased the land from him, and as they engaged in their negotiations, at that time, a plague was devastating the Jewish people. 70,000 people had died. And at that time, Aravna told David, may God favor you. And then 2 verses later, it says, and indeed, God favored the Jewish people and the plague ended. And Daniel was, the prophet Daniel was exiled in Persia. He was a member of the king's court of Dariush. The law stated that no one could pray or make any requests to anyone other than the king. Of course, Daniel used to pray each day toward Yerushalayim. He would open his windows and pray toward Yerushalayim. And when it became known that he prayed to God, unfortunately, he had to be sentenced to death. He was thrown into the lion's den. And Dariush, King Darius, although he respected Daniel and did not want to hurt him, was bound by the rule of law and had to throw him in the lion's den. And as he throws him into the lion's den, he tells him, your God, whom you continually serve, will deliver you. And indeed, Daniel was saved from the lions. So the Talmud is telling us that blessings have, if we believe that the evil eye has power, how much more so should we believe that blessings have power? And if an anxious and miserly and jealous, shriveled up person with their evil eye could have a negative effect, how much more so can a generous and positive and open-hearted person have a positive effect? And therefore, we should constantly offer blessings whenever we can to our fellow Jews. Indeed, the Sefer Charedim, interestingly, the Sefer Charedim was written by Rabbi Elazar Azkari. He is also the author of the famous song Yedid Nefesh. So the author of the Yedid Nefesh says that when you look at your fellows with a good eye and give them blessings and also receive blessings yourself, the verse states, a person who has a generous eye will be blessed. So that the pasuk says, Tov ayin hu yivorach. He says, rather than reading a person who has a generous eye will be blessed, yivorach, read v'tov ayin hu yivorech. That is, give blessings and be blessed. So, throw around those blessings as much as possible. They counteract all the different versions of the evil eye that you could possibly conceive of. They counteract the negative energy of words. If curses have an impact, then blessings have an impact. If evil eye has an impact, then a positive eye has an impact. And similarly, within ourselves, if my jealousy eats me up in the inside, then my blessings is the healing balm that I need in order to overcome that. So, and if somebody else behaves in a way that attracts negative attention to themselves, then let me turn that into a blessing. Even in the last text, which we'll look at today, the Baal Shem Tov taught, text 16, page 106, that a blessing given by a close friend is more influential in heaven and likely to achieve its desired effect than the angel Michael's intercessions and pleas for mercy. So that's huge. Now, what is the meaning of a blessing given by a close friend? It means a blessing given, an authentic blessing, given with sincere good wishes for the other. What's a friend? A close friend is somebody that you really care. You want them to be good. You want it to be good for them. In Italian, the word for love is amore, and the word for I like you. So in Italian, you say ti amo, if I love you. In Italian, I like you, Te voglio bene. I want what's good for you. I want it to be good for you. So that's what means a sincere friend. I really want your good. So if from that place in my heart I give that blessing to somebody else, that has even more power than the power of angels. And next week, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about angels. But to summarize what we learned today, and then we have a few minutes for questions and comments, as if we didn't have any throughout the whole class today. We said that there are different ideas in Judaism about the evil eye and the curse. Some say that it's actually just what happens to you when you look negatively at somebody else, or when you attract negativity on yourself, or you cause somebody else to be jealous of you. We also said that there are other views that say that there is actually an impact. Words have an impact. They send out spiritual energy into the world that impacts people around them. The way we look at people has an impact. And we said also that there is part of the idea is that whether we're operating in the system of strict judgment, then where our vulnerabilities are exposed. But if we're operating in the private and modest place, then we are more close to the eternal and infinite source of the universe, who is Halon B'Seiser, who is concealed, and therefore we're connected to the source of blessing. We also talked about the importance of maintaining modesty and not flaunting our blessings so as not to attract jealousy and negative attention, and that avoids the evil eye. And finally, we talked about the importance of the strongest counteracting of the evil eye is brachas, is following Torah and mitzvos, having a mezuzah on our door, and doing all kinds of, following the commandments of Hashem, because by keeping Hashem close to us, we are protected from any negativity. And of course, having a mezuzah on our door reminds us to walk with Hashem all the time. And finally, we talked, the last point is that the ayin hara, the way in which to avoid ayin hara, is to give brachas. We have to constantly be blessing our fellow Jews, not speak negatively about our fellow Jews, not to speak evil on somebody, not to criticize, to bless, to bless, to bless. And when we bless, we bring blessings to themselves. We bring blessings to that, and we bring blessings to ourselves. Okay, comments, questions? Yes, Jane.
What about a person who, for some reason, has to say something negative, but you see in their eyes, non-verbally or in their gestures, that they really care about you?
Yes.
And they feel very, very pained about being so obnoxious.
Yes,
They don't make you feel sick. You understand what's going on, and you feel pain for them, but you also feel love for them.
Right. I think there's an excellent point.
From eyes.
Yes, you can get it from their eyes. And the halacha also says, right, the halacha also says that when you have to criticize someone, you should do it in private. So there again, we have the same idea. I understand what you're saying about how you can convey love, right? You can convey love even while you're having to say something harsh.
No, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean something harsh. I meant something obnoxious or
I'm having trouble imagining it, but I'll work on it. Okay.
It happens to people.
Okay.
That somebody, it's not a criticism and it's not a rebuke. It's just an obnoxious statement.
Okay.
And the person's eyes tell you that they're pain. To have to be so obnoxious to you.
Okay. I hear that.
In other words, you understand the whole situation.
Yeah.
But their eyes are saying something kind.
I hear you. Yes, Moshe.
Many people would say, when you talk about the evil eyes and the way it works, it's just superstition.
Right.
So what do you answer to that?
Well, certainly there is such a thing as superstition. So we didn't talk about things like a black cat walking under a ladder, passing a child over the table, shaking hands across the doorway, all of these things,
Number
the
13.
the number 13, and we can list all of them. These things are unequivocally, the Torah says, we should not be concerned about them at all. Ein bohem mamish, there's nothing to them. As a matter of fact, giving them credence gives credence to a power outside of Hashem. Right? This is, so we didn't talk about superstitions today. We talked particularly about ayin hara motzias adam min ha'olam, how the way in which we interact with others can have a spiritual impact. That people can have a spiritual impact on each other, right? And being mindful of how we interact socially, not only in our interactions, but also in our attitudes and in the kind of attentions we attract to ourselves, right? But absolutely, and maybe that's what your father was talking about. The black cat, forget it, nothing there, right? Walking under the ladder, do it on purpose. Maybe you don't want to do that on purpose but it's not a superstition. It's to make sure the person doesn't fall on your head, chas v'shalom, right? But this is forbidden, actually. It's forbidden to pay attention to those things. We have to have faith in Hashem and know that our Torah and mitzvos is what matters. And finally, I want to say again, we have to speak positively about our fellow Jews, to give them blessings whenever possible, to give them brachas, to say never, not to speak, not to be somebody, we're worried about getting an ayin hara. We shouldn't be giving an ayin hara. Not to give an ayin hara on a fellow Jew, chas v'shalom, by pointing out their negativity, by pointing out their mistakes, by pointing out how wrong they are. It's okay. It's okay. If I need to speak about how somebody is not doing the right thing, I should bring them inside cheder lifnim cheder, one room inside of another room, and I should speak to them privately in a calm and sweet voice and tell them, Tivolio Bena, I want your best, and I think that you should reconsider this thing. But the Torah, this is a universal teaching. Absolutely. This is a universal teaching. And remember also, what we post on social media, we should be mindful and intentional that what we're posting on social media is inspirational and connecting us with our friends, and not a curated life, which chas v'shalom can make other people jealous. Okay. Any questions from the internet? All righty. Thank you for joining us.